Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey, everybody. I am delighted to introduce my guest today, Allison. Kay has been juicy AF, that's alcohol-free, since 1999. She is a successful entrepreneur, author, and leader of an alcohol-free community. She helps women transform their lives by stopping the drinking spiral and creating their rich, rewarding, joyful future. Please join me in welcoming Allison. Welcome, Kay.
Hey, Tammy, it's so fun to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, I am so excited to have you here, and welcome from your home office in Boulder, Colorado.
Boulder, Colorado, where there are deer and turkeys and all kinds of things going on outside my window.
Wow, I love it. I love it. I love it. The only thing that's outside my window right now is probably an inflatable turkey in somebody's yard. Although we do have wild turkeys here in the wilds of Newton. But anyway, as you know, on Work from the Inside Out, we like to begin in the formative years, at the beginning. So take us back to some of your earlier years and tell us how they may or may not have informed where you are today.
I grew up in a family where I always felt like the fifth wheel. My parents had a lot in common, and my two older sisters were about 16 months apart. And they had been together for about 4 or 5 years before I came on the scene. And so I felt like existentially wrong. I was supposed to have been Matthew, which I clearly am not.
Right.
And I grew up in a family of scientists and teachers. So, and my home, I like to joke, was 50 Shades of Beige.
Oh, wow.
And I am nothing. I don't think I own anything beige. And if I do, it's like this leopard print that I got.
Right. That's about as close to beige as you get. And since our listeners can't see you at the moment, they should know that you are wearing the most striking and fun, very bright red glasses.
Yes, I am. Everything in my life is colorful.
Yes.
And I really did not feel like I fit. And I learned to pretend to get my cues from the external world about how to fit in and how to belong. I also was highly intuitive, and I knew things without having any rational way to know them. Where in a family of scientists, that is not necessarily a valued commodity. And I really found my place in singing and playing the cello. I was very musical, but it's a place where I felt I very clearly had an image that there was some energy from above pouring through me and being expressed out through me. And that was really the place that I felt the most at home.
Do you recall when it really kind of hit you, maybe more consciously, that you really didn't fit in, or you were different from the rest of your family in that way?
Well, yeah, I can. As I said, I grew up in a family of scientists, and intellectual life was prized as far more superior to any athletic activity. And I became a cheerleader in 7th grade, and they thought that was hilarious.
I see. Were they supportive of your activities?
They found that very amusing. But I will tell you, I was in all the musicals and all of the choral performances and choir performances and orchestra performances. And my dad, God bless him, came to every single performance that I was ever in.
Mm-hmm. So even though you felt like your interests diverged, you felt there was a presence of support.
Yeah. I mean, my parents, my mom has often described me as having been a handful. And finally I said to her, what are you talking about? A handful? She said, oh, you were into things that we didn't know anything about. And it was intimidating. You know, you were into classical music and we were into science and we didn't know anything about it. And so I think that just because I was so far different, that it really pushed them outside of their comfort zone.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but you stayed true to yourself, it sounds like. And they were, at least on one level or another, supportive.
Absolutely. Like they never said you shouldn't major in cello, which any rational parent would have said. You know, they bought me an instrument. They schlepped me to all the lessons. My mom and I went to the opera together because I was fascinated by opera. So they really did. They really did show up and they made it really possible for me to pursue what I was interested in, even though it wasn't something that they necessarily understood or valued in their own lives.
Yeah. Well, and likewise, you probably felt the same way about their interests, right?
Yeah, very much so.
So, yeah. And you weren't Matthew either.
No, weirdly, no.
So you went off to school and you studied cello and I know you went to Northwestern. I live in Boston. So
I know. Northwestern.
Right.
I did.
So you went to Northwestern, you studied music.
I was a cello major. Yes, I was.
Yeah. So take us forward from there.
I played in the civic orchestra of the Chicago Symphony. It was like a paraprofessional kind of orchestra that was affiliated with the Chicago Symphony. And there was this really handsome fella that hit on all the pretty girls. And I was always a little insulted that he had never hit on me. And he finally did. And I ended up marrying him.
Oh. So this was after graduation then?
Yeah, during college, and I married him right after graduation.
Oh, wow.
Weeks after. And he was a trombone player in the Chicago Symphony. And I decided about my beginning of my senior year that I really did not want to be a classical musician. While I loved music, it wasn't going to give me the lifestyle that I wanted, number one. And number two, I didn't find that playing as a cellist in a section in an orchestra to be a very creative endeavor. And so for those reasons, plus my husband at the time was a member of the Chicago Symphony, so he was always going to be better than I was. And that doesn't sit so well with my competitive streak. So I went to see a career consultant. Believe it or not, Tammy, she said, well, what else do you like to do besides music? And I was wearing a bright red suit when I went to see her. So I said, well, I like reading. I love English literature. And I'm really good at organizing things. And she said, you should go back to Northwestern. You should get a master's degree in marketing communications. Go talk to this guy as the head of the program. And I did. That's exactly what I did. And I went right on. I got my master's and it was then advertising. It's now marketing communications. And got a job at a global ad agency in Chicago right out of school.
Wow. And how did that go for you?
Oh my God, I loved it. I loved it. I felt, well, I'm going to go back to a childhood thing. When I was 7 years old, my second grade teacher had us write our autobiographies, which is hilarious when you're 7. Like, what have you done? Right. And I said that I wanted to be either a missionary, spiritual teacher, right? That travels the world.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a nurse because I like healing people. Or I wanted to be a secretary, which back in the 60s was like what a woman in business did.
Yeah.
And so that's what I felt like. I felt like career girl K with my, my little padded shoulders and little briefcase, little floppy bow tie. I mean, this was the 80s. So I really did do all those things. And I loved it. It made me feel important. I was really good at it. I just thought I felt like I had arrived. I loved what I was doing.
Yeah. So we know you're not doing that today, though.
No, I'm not. Yeah. So let's see, about, 12 or 13 or 14 years in, I was getting restless. I was with the same agency that I'd been with from right out of school. And I was starting to feel restless. Like I was in my mid 30s. I was a single mom at that point. I'd been married for 10 years, had 2 kids with my ex-husband. And I don't know, it just didn't feel the same as and exciting and as exhilarating as it did when I started. And I worked with a career coach and ended up, one of the most brilliant things was somebody suggested to me, because I was running new business development for this office of this global ad agency. And they said, go and get some training. Like I was writing RFPs. I was writing responses to RFPs that would come in from like Fortune 50 companies. Mm-hmm. What's your philosophy of marketing communications? And I'm in my little office making stuff up, right? So I'm like, God, I really need to be at the leading edge thinking. So I went to Harvard for a summer program and I got a certificate in corporate creativity where I learned a lot of great things. And then I also got trained as an executive coach on their dime, which was all about how you create identity through your speech, through your conversations. And so I kind of married those two things and I created this process for new business development where so what I learned is that any creative process is a diamond shape. There's a divergent phase and then a convergence phase, right? Mm-hmm. And ad agencies love having ideas. So we would diverge. And then it would be 4 a.m. the day of the pitch. And we'd be like, oh, shoot, we gotta, and there would be no time to make sure that it all really worked together. So the process I created was very broad and flat divergent, very fast, but very creative. And then I forced the team to pick a direction and spend the rest of the time refining and honing and just making sure that the whole presentation really knit together. And that process involved interacting with consumers in very creative ways upfront. Like to do the market research, we would stage experiences for people and have them go through these experiences. And this increased the win rate by over 30%. Then I got recruited by another agency to do the same thing for them. And so I got this process down, stuff that I learned from my executive coaching, stuff that I learned at Harvard, knit it together. And it became this replicable formula. Then clients started hiring me to do that formula, that process for them in service of new product development. So like Unilever and Kraft both signed on as clients. And the money that I brought in dropped directly to the bottom line. And it was at least $1 million a year in profits for the work that I was doing.
Wow.
And the agency didn't give me any of it. So I had been presenting this to this woman who was the new chief marketing officer of this agency that I was working for. She had been there for about 6 weeks. We were in the ladies' room together. I kid you not. She goes, look, I know I've only been here a short amount of time, but why are you doing this inside this company? You should be out as a consultant doing this. And I can help you get this done. I was like, oh my God. What?
Wow.
So I helped her, I wrote her an email and I said, look, if I were in your shoes, this is what I would do. So we partnered up and I helped her kind of figure out what her job was. And then she helped me. I negotiated with the global leadership of this agency. I thought that they were going to ask for a portion of the, percentage of the business and I walked out of there with a $500,000 contract over 2 years to start my own agency doing this process that had been so successful. I could not believe it. Could not believe it. So much better than anything I could have created for myself. So part of the story there, Tammy, is about a year before that, I had given up alcohol.
Aha. So there's another part of the fabric of your life there.
Yeah, big part of the fabric. So again, just to draw that thread through from when I was little, I grew up in this really quiet, studious brown house, and I am colorful and creative. And drinking, when I first started drinking when I was 13 or 14 years old, it felt magical and full of possibilities and color, and it didn't feel as leaden and heavy as the energy that I grew up around. And one of the reasons I fell in love with my ex-husband was because the way he and his family drank. And he was 19, he still is 19 years older than I am. And, I met him when I was 17. So I wasn't even legal to drink. And so he was 30, whatever. And, we'd go to cocktail parties together and stuff. And I just thought that was the most glamorous thing in the world. Right. And so when we split up, my drinking probably got worse because I was alone.
Yeah.
And about, I say I got sober in my very, very, very late 30s. It was the day before I turned 40.
Uh-huh. Well, that would be very, very, very late 30s, right?
Yeah, it is. It is, about as late as you can get. And so I gave up alcohol. And one of the things that I learned was that the way to navigate tricky situations was to embody a set of spiritual principles. And so before I walked into this big negotiation with my current employer, I wrote down 3 words on my legal pad: courage, sincerity, and honesty. And those were the principles that I practiced in that conversation. And as I said to you, I thought that they would want part ownership of the firm. I thought I didn't, or they were going to say, yeah, we're not interested, or I didn't know what they were going to say. But when I walked out of there with a $500,000 contracts, plus they introduced me to all of their clients, it was just unbelievable. I mean, I was a single parent. My 2 older kids were at a very expensive private school. And you would look at that and go, God, that is the riskiest thing you could possibly do. But I thought that it was riskier for me to pin all of my financial well-being onto a council of guys that I didn't trust and who didn't treat women very well.
Mm-hmm.
I trusted myself more than I trusted them.
Yeah. Yeah. Clearly. I'm curious. I am going to change the subject slightly.
Okay, good.
Or even entirely. So you said that you started drinking when you were 13 or 14. Do you remember why you started, or how did that come about as part of like a peer thing in middle school, junior high school, or early high school years? Or
so I was the youngest of 3 girls, and my sisters seemed very glamorous to me. I mean, like to an 8-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 15-year-old seem pretty grown up.
Yeah.
And so I had my first drink. I was a freshman in high school. I was very excited. I'd been invited out to a party by an upperclassman. And we walked into this party in somebody's basement. Somebody handed me, one of those red Solo cups full of beer. And all I remember was that there was a guy playing guitar that was adorable. And I started making out with him and rolling around on the floor. And then my date took me home and said, I think you had a little too much to drink tonight. And that kind of set the tone for my drinking. It seemed glamorous to me. It seemed more grown up and sophisticated than what I really was.
And that was the beginning.
That was the beginning.
So, so then you just had more and more opportunities, it sounds like.
I was a straight A student, and I would drink on the weekends all through high school and college. And that's just kind of the way I lived for a long time. I was an insecure overachiever, Tammy.
But, in some ways, someone might say, hearing that, so a lot of kids did that. So what distinguishes your, let's say, relationship to alcohol and saying now, that you stopped and that this has become, really a core part of your values and your focus in terms of who you help? What is the, what compelled you to stop, and what, I think it's a personal choice or decision for a lot of people too. But the picture you're painting so far could have sounded like a lot of people listening.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. And I think part of my message with the work I'm doing today is you do not have to hit rock bottom in order to decide that you want to be free from the drain of alcohol. I quit when I could no longer deny that the person I was when I drank was far afield from the person that I thought of myself as being. And it was just not okay.
Yeah.
And that's really where I start a lot of the women that I work with is let's get really clear about your ideal future self. And then tell me, does this match or does this not? Does the drunk you, does it match or does it not? Because that's kind of the crux. The other thing is that biologically, I react to alcohol like this. Once I start, I only want more. I don't have an off switch. You know how most people like have a glass and they're like, oh, I feel kind of tipsy. I should be done.
Yeah.
I have a glass and I feel tipsy and I'm like, oh, baby, let's go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying.
And then the second demarcation is once I stop and I say, oh, I'm never going to do that again. I always start again. There's always some random reason why I start again. Could be as simple as somebody hands me a glass, And then the third demarcation is if you spend more time thinking about drinking than you do what you had for lunch, you probably have an issue.
Yeah. And so these are all things that you experienced over the years, it sounds like.
Yeah, I didn't have an off switch from the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. When did you recognize that you didn't have an off switch or that you recognized that you were being somebody else?
I recognized that once I started, I pretty much always drank too much. And I started adjusting my life around that. So I moved from the suburbs into the city so I could take a taxi home because we didn't have Ubers back in the day.
Right.
Right. And I just kind of planned around that. It was when I realized that I had set out to not drink one night and ended up drinking too much that freaked me out. It was like, oh my God, if I can't control how much I drink and I can't control if I start to drink, then I am screwed. I could be going to meet the President of the United States. And if somebody handed me a glass of wine beforehand, all bets are off. That scared me to death.
Yeah. So it sounds like, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong. Was this a very singular process for you, this decision you made and, about discovering who you were when you were drinking, who you were when you were not drinking, and sort of noticing the patterns, or did you get feedback from other people?
No, I hit it really well. I present very together, whether I am or am not. People were surprised when I said I've stopped drinking. Most people.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I really did hide it. I have always been curious about what it means to be a human being and personal development and spirituality. I've always been drawn to that. And I had been in therapy for years, years and years. And it felt like there were little breadcrumbs. Oh, that isn't really working. As I said, I was turning 40 and I had this thought, oh my God, I'm hungover like 3 or 4 days a week. If I live to be 80 years old, I'm going to be hungover for 20 of those years. That sounds horrible, right? I went to a recovery meeting and the people freaked me out. So I'd been, and I remember being introduced to somebody and she mentioned getting sober. So there were just little,
breadcrumbs,
nudges.
Like you said. Yeah.
Little nudges for about, maybe 9 months before I reached the point where I was like, I'm done.
Yeah. Wow. That's big. I mean, I that's not a typical story that I hear when I speak with somebody who decided to stop, or who is, different people, I guess, express it differently. Some people say they're in recovery. Some people say they're sober. Some people say both. And a lot of people have shared stories with me about, various bridges they burned along the way, people they had to make amends with later on. And I'm not presuming that is or isn't true for you. But it sounds like what you're saying is that this was really a very internal process for you in terms of a conversation you had with yourself, and that it really was something that you decided on your own.
Look, some of my friends flipped cars and got myriad DUIs, and it had a lot of drama, external drama around their drinking. That was not my story.
Yeah.
It just wasn't. It wasn't my story.
Yeah.
I was a good girl by day and drank too much by night.
Yeah. And so once you decided to stop, what did you have a process for stopping, or did you just say, I'm done?
Both. Right.
Okay.
So for me, when I was done, it was like the switch flipped and I was done. I've subsequently learned that it's easier to make a 100% commitment to being alcohol free than it is to be 99% committed. And it has to do with how much brain space it takes up. With 100%, I've made one decision and that's the decision. With 99%, I'm always in the, is this the exception? Is this
right?
Is this the exception? Is that the exception? So it's cleaner to be 100% committed. And I really was.
Yeah.
I really was.
Yeah.
I also did go to a recovery program. And what I learned from that is it's really important to have a roadmap and to have some traveling companions on this trip.
Mm-hmm. So that took some time, I would imagine.
Yeah, it did. I mean, I had spectacular changes. I think the most surprising thing about going alcohol free to me was how much energy had been drained by me either getting numb or being hungover. And within the first, few years, I increased my income by a multiple of 6. I launched 2 successful businesses. I met and married a guy that I'm still insanely crazy about. I adopted a child. I wrote a book. I mean, it just was like my life just exploded. And my real life was the color and magic and possibility that I used to only be able to access when I drank. So kind of my message there is, oh my gosh, you have no idea how much energy is getting drained if you buy into the mommy wine culture or whatever. It just is just incredible when you repurpose that energy.
Right.
The magnitude of change in every domain of my life was earth shaking.
Yeah.
The other thing that I learned was I walked into a meeting early on and there was this woman telling her story, Tammy, and she was beautifully dressed, impeccably groomed, and articulate. She's telling this story about when she decided to go alcohol free. And she said something like, it was 3 a.m. I was in my living room with my husband and my boyfriend and the police. And I thought this was perfectly normal. She threw back these red curls and she laughed. And I was riveted and shocked. At the time, I was so buried under layers of shame and remorse and regret and embarrassment, and then wallpaper over all of that saying, nothing to see here, pass on by.
Yeah.
And she just embodied the sense of freedom from all of that garbage I was hauling around and the sense of sparkling aliveness and joy. And I thought, I want that.
Yeah.
And today I want to be that for other women.
Yeah. 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 It's almost like you're holding the door open for them, right?
Yeah. And the reason that the name of my stuff is Juicy AF is because it's a little bit cheeky. It's got a sense of humor. And I thought that a life without alcohol was going to be boring and terrible. And it actually is so juicy. It can be whatever you want it to be.
So when you decided to stop, you thought you were making a choice to have a boring life?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
I think most people who drink think that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, I'm never going to have any fun.
And yet you still made the choice to go in the boring direction.
Well, I really felt like I had to.
When did you figure out that that wasn't the case? How long did that take?
It happened pretty fast, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I met a lot of other people that were my age, that were single. I lived downtown Chicago, and we just ran in a pack. We hung out together every weekend. We went to movies. We went bowling. We went for ice cream. We sat at Denny's, drank coffee till 2 a.m. I mean, we went to dances. Like, we did all this goofy, dorky stuff and laughed.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah. Sounds wonderful.
It was.
So and at this time you were still working in the ad agency too, right?
Yep. So I went alcohol free August 9th of 99, and I started my first business in 2000. So almost a year to the day.
Very interesting. So, a year to the day, you get this $500,000 contract. And what were you
It was so
What were you
crazy.
thinking?
What was I thinking?
No, I mean, I don't mean it like that. I mean, there you were still probably feeling like you had a whole new life already. And now your life was going to be all new again, right?
Yeah, it was a lot of change in a short amount of time. In this group that I was hanging out with, when I had just struck this deal, I was bubbling about it to this guy sitting next to me. And the guy sitting across was like, "Hey, what's going on over there?"
Yeah.
And so I told him what was happening. He's like, "Oh, I just started a company." And we got to talking, and he decided he was going to come over on Saturday morning and create a spreadsheet for me, because I didn't know how to do a spreadsheet at that point. And he wooed me with spreadsheets, and now I'm married to him.
Wow.
Yeah, Excel,
That
baby.
is sexy. I'll tell you. Spreadsheets.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. That's great.
Oh, it was just so great. It was so great. Here are the things that I felt confident about. I felt confident because my process had created $1 million in profit for the company that I was working for in the previous year. So I felt confident in my process. I had proof that it could make money. And part of my deal with my former employer was they were going to introduce me and recommend me to all of their clients. So I had a built-in funnel to, big companies like Kraft and Avon and Hewlett Packard and, Purina and all of these big firms. And that's really where I started. That's where I started my company. And I mean, I was making stuff up. I had no idea what I was doing. And I was doing everything from writing the proposals to washing the floor to sending the invoices to running the projects, all the project management, logistics. And I mean, I was doing all of it.
Sure.
And back in the day, I was quite the flirt. So I hadn't gotten married yet, but I was flying somewhere on a project, and I ran into this guy standing in line to go to the bathroom. And he told me that he belonged to this group called the Strategic Coach, and that it had doubled his income the first year, doubled his income again the second year, and doubled it yet again the third year. And I was like, wait, what was the name of that program? And my girlfriends were all like, you didn't ask him for his phone number, but you, yeah, I'd rather make that money myself. Thank you very much. So I joined that program. It's called The Strategic Coach, put on by a guy named Dan Sullivan. And they really taught me how to be an entrepreneur.
Oh, wow.
Because I had no idea what I was doing. And by lunch on the first day, they kept talking about delegate this to your team and delegate that to your team. And the joke was they had me on suicide watch by noon because I didn't have a team.
I was going to say, what team?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah, but they really, really taught me how to be an entrepreneur. And I credit a lot of my early success to that program.
Wow. Wow. That's great. So that was, in a way, that was another life ago, right?
Oh, gosh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So take us forward from there.
So the company that I started was a consumer insight company. So we did market research, mostly qualitative. So I learned how to connect very instantly with people all over the world. So I did work in China, I did work in Brazil, all over Europe, of course, all over the United States. And it was all in service of product innovation. So we helped Fortune 200 companies create their next $100 million platforms. And at one point, kind of at the height of it, those clients were generating over $2 billion a year from the work that we had done together. So we had really, really good success. The business model was tricky, though. My projects maybe lasted 6 to 12 months, and I had high fixed costs because I hired very expert, very excellent, highly paid people.
Mm-hmm.
And so my revenue was not, I didn't have any retainers. So every month I was starting at zero, and my monthly expenses were like $400,000 a month. Like it was and I did it for 15 years.
Wow.
It was a grind. It was terrifying. It was really, really terrifying. That's why my hair is white today. To counterbalance that lack of steady income, we started a focus group facility. My husband and I bought a building in the West Loop of Chicago, and we started a really, really cool focus group facility called the Energy Annex. We ran it for 17 years. It was voted world's best facility for every single one of those years.
Wow.
And then when COVID hit, nobody was doing in-person focus groups and stuff. The thing that was great, I had gotten connected to a person who was in the marketing services group at Kraft Foods. And the marketing services people it was a small group of maybe 7 people, but they were internal consultants to every single division and every single brand. And they liked me and I was good. And so they would recommend me. I basically touched every single division of Kraft Foods.
Mm-hmm.
And as those people left Kraft and they went to Hewlett Packard, or they went to Avon, or they went to Bank of America, or they went to ConAgra, or they went to Pepsi, or, GlaxoSmithKline, they would take us along with them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way my business spread. So it was like cooking along. Along the way, my husband and I adopted a little girl from China. And at the time that we adopted her, we also opened our focus group facility like the same month. They were not supposed to happen even in the same year, but it happened in the same month. And all of a sudden, I was doing a ton of global travel. And about 5-6 years in, we just decided it wasn't working. I just couldn't be on the road half my time and have a 5-year-old, and it just stopped working. So I wound that down.
I see.
At around the same time, we decided to move to Colorado because we'd both always wanted to live in Colorado. And so we moved. And when we got here to Boulder, I started doing some consulting with some small local natural food companies. Boulder is like the epicenter of the natural food community, entrepreneurs. And I had this arrogant thought, Tammy, that, oh my gosh, these people are doing pretty well and they don't have any of the business skills and experience that I have. Surely I can do this too. So I started a natural food company with a former client who was CMO at Campbell's.
Uh-huh.
And we started a company called Farm and Oven Snacks. There are 3 little mini muffins in each pack, and you got a half serving of veggies in each pack. So like chocolate chip muffins with zucchini in them. Anyway, we did that for about 4 years and then sold that company, which I was very glad to get out of because this was a lot harder than it looked from the outside.
Yeah, sure. But it sounds like it was an adventure.
It was an adventure. I met a whole new network of people. I learned so much, like I went and pitched Walmart. We got into Walmart. I learned how to actually work in a commercial kitchen because we would hand cut every single muffin ourselves at the beginning. I mean, it was a whole experience.
Yeah. Wow. No, it sounds like it's a lot of hard work, but the fact that you were able to sell it and get into a place like Walmart says something about your ability to start and build and grow a business. So, and you were no longer doing the focus group.
Right.
Right. So so now you're in Boulder, you're raising your daughter, and you've sold the natural food company.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was really thinking that it was time to create something that packaged up all of the insight and skill and spiritual learning that I had gotten. One thing that, my son laughs at me because I'm really not an autodidact, but I am omnivorous when it comes to being curious about a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
So when we moved to Boulder, I got involved with a clairvoyance school, with a psychic school. And so I am a trained clairvoyant.
Oh,
so
wow.
all that intuition that wasn't, really the currency of the house I grew up in is now something that I really lean into and I really use very, very deliberately. So I wanted to do something around that. And I kept trying. I'd put this out, I'd put that out, and then at the beginning of the pandemic, I started an online recovery meeting. Really just for myself and my girlfriends. But very quickly it grew to 60-ish people 7 days a week from all over the world. And there's something about the vibe of that meeting. It's warm and welcoming and friendly and honest and smart. And still today, it's still going. I'm not involved with it very much anymore, but it's still going. And what happened was I would see these people come in, green, shaking, their eyes dull, their lives a shambles. And within 30 days, that little pilot light behind their eyes had clicked back on.
Wow.
And then 7-8 months later, they'd be talking about how grateful they were that their family, that, their kids were telling them how much they appreciated their dad showing up for them and stuff. And oh my God, it is such a magnificent, awe-inspiring experience to have created an environment, a vibe, a space where people come in and they just are like reborn. They're awakened.
Yeah.
There was something so awe-inspiring about that, Tammy. I just felt like, oh my God, this is my purpose. This is what I'm here to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's what I've been working on ever since.
So that was sort of the springboard into what you're doing now.
That's exactly right.
So what you're doing now, what does that look like in any sort of detail? Not great detail, but what is it that people listening, if they wanted to find out more about it, what would they need to know?
So Juicy AF is a course and a book and a community for successful women like I was, insecure,
Right.
overachieving women like me, who are concerned about the consequences of their drinking and who don't feel like going to AA is what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
They don't feel like that's a good fit for them.
Mm-hmm.
That's what this is.
I see. Okay.
So if you're a successful woman who's sober curious, or you're worried about the health consequences, or whatever your deal is, Juicy AF is an alternative for you, made for you.
I see.
So it's a 4-month-long program. It's 120 days. And it's very experiential. There's not a lot of dogma. There's hey, go out and experiment with the idea of practicing honesty this week, and let's figure out what you learn about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also a book, a workbook, and a journal, and a book club. So I'm doing a lot around my book as well.
Mm-hmm. So tell us about the book.
I'm super excited about the book.
I know.
Yeah. So there are 3 parts to the book. The first part is for the woman who is on is my drinking really a problem? I don't know. am I really having a problem with this? So it's to answer that question.
Mm-hmm.
The second part is for the woman who's like, my drinking isn't working for me. I'm going to experiment with going alcohol free. It's, very practical, very tangible tips and tools for how to not pick up and how to handle those awkward social situations without drinking.
Right.
But then the third part is once you've got those two things kind of down, it's about envisioning and stepping into your ideal future self. And we talk about and we apply 5 spiritual laws of the universe. And it's not wacky, wonky stuff. It's figure out who your ideal self is, figure out what your story about yourself is, substitute spiritual principles or character values or whatever. Forgive yourself and forgive everybody else and show up and help other people. I mean, it's pretty anodyne. You can't really argue with any of it.
Right. I certainly wouldn't.
Right.
So, and these are all things that are, it's in your book. I mean, somebody could buy your book and work through this, but in the course, they'd be also in a community of people. I mean, there's obvious benefits to being in the course and having the workbook, the journal, and the book, and having really a fuller experience in that way. And I assume that the course starts on a sort of cyclical basis.
Yeah. The first one is going to start February of 23.
Okay.
And then every 3 months, we'll have another cohort going through it.
Great. It sounds amazing. It really does. So what is the best way for people to get in touch with you or find out more about what you're doing?
Go to juicyaf.life, juicyaf.life, and there is a book bundle. So if you go to juicyaf.life/book, you will be able to get the workbook, which is not going to be available anywhere else, the workbook and the journal, and an invitation to my live book club, which I'm going to run every month.
Excellent. Wow. That's amazing. We will have all of that in the show notes, of course. And are there any cello lessons thrown in there too?
No, but I will tell you, I do teach people how to tap into their intuition, their normal, natural psychic abilities.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Well, and it sounds totally appropriate too. I mean, the whole point is to get connected with your inner self in that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Wonderful. So I have one more question for you.
Yes.
And that is, you have clearly moved through a variety of transitions in your life.
Yes,
and
I have.
A lot of people listening to this are also considering their what's next. What would be a key piece of advice that you would give somebody who's considering their next move?
Tammy, I feel like I look back over my career and I think, oh my God, you can tell I have ADD. Like, first I'm doing this, then I'm doing that, then what served me incredibly well has been to indulge my curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've been able to take some of the concepts and the models from this interesting thing over here that has nothing to do with marketing and bring it in and say, hey, what if we played with this framework within marketing? And it's just opened things up in ways that nobody else is seeing because everybody else is doing marketing this way. Oh, I went out and studied biology and I learned this really interesting concept over here. What if we just drop that in? And that's really what my career success has been due to, being able to learn about things far afield just because I'm interested in them, and then taking a kernel from each one of them and weaving it together in a new way.
I love that.
The other piece that I want to say is we all live inside rings of fear.
Mm-hmm.
and they're self-constructed.
Right.
The good news about that is if we constructed them, we can construct something else.
That's right.
And
That's right.
so coaxing yourself to experiment with something for a week or a month is a great way to kind of slowly live yourself into a new reality. It doesn't have to be a giant leap. It really, really does not.
In fact, it probably shouldn't be. I think most people who make changes that last don't make giant leaps. It might feel like they did, even when you say, when you stop drinking, you turn that switch off. There was a lot of incremental pieces that went into you turning that switch off. It wasn't just you woke up one day and said, I'm turning the switch off. There were a lot of things, that happened along the way before you got there. So I think that's very human.
Tammy, I think the reason that I love the format of your podcast so much is because in so many retellings of someone's success, it seems like it was a seamless one step after another step, and no fear and no self-doubt and no hesitation along the way, when in reality, that is not the way it goes.
No.
There is always self-doubt. And it's great because you get to look at that stuff and go, oh, that's really cool. I made that up. I wonder what else I could make up.
Right. Absolutely. And on that fabulous note, I'm going to thank you for being here today. This has been delightful, Kay. Thank you so much for sharing your journey, and really appreciate all the generosity in sharing your story today.
Thanks for the opportunity, Tammy. It really meant a lot to me to be here.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Kay Allison. It was so interesting to speak with her and learn about her early life, decisions to make various transitions, and her current work. What is your key takeaway from our interview? If you're interested in any of the resources mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them in the show notes on my website at tammygulerloeb.com/podcast. Just look for episode 212. Are you anticipating your next professional move? Check out my award-winning book, Work from the Inside Out. Break through 9 common obstacles and design a career that fulfills you. It's available in paperback and ebook editions through my website, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores, or through your local library. If you were inspired by this episode with Kay, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and please do subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. And if you're enjoying the podcast, I'd really appreciate reading your review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find. Go to my website, tammygulerloeb.com/podcast, click on the Apple Podcasts button, and follow the instructions provided there. You can also help out by sustaining this podcast. Hey, just treat me to a cup of coffee at buymeacupofcoffee.com/TammyGL. Since this podcast is self-funded, I would so appreciate your generosity and support. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. I'd love to hear how it's going for you. Drop me a line. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information, you can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.